Daryl, after you call the meeting to order, we'll play an opening statement.
At the or is that what you're going to play?
The statement about the meeting being recorded.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're going to play that?
After you call the meeting to order.
Okay, so I don't need to read that then?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. I can lay that aside then.
But just so you know, the agenda you sent me is February 11th, 2020. So something's wrong.
Well, good evening. I'm Daryl Seesos, currently Vice Chair of the Planning Commission. And at this point, I'm calling the meeting to order.
Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township public meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. Due to the COVID-19 virus and Governor Wolf's orders limiting indoor gatherings, in-person attendance for this meeting is being limited to a maximum of 25 people who will be observing social distancing. Additionally, based upon the order of the Secretary of Health regarding face coverings, all participants in the public meeting room are required to wear a face covering unless they fit into one of the order's exceptions. When speaking, while maintaining social distance, participants may remove their face covering. Therefore, this meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. The Township is expecting to utilize this vehicle for all future public meetings during and after the COVID-19 crisis. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website and will be posted on the front of the Township building. The Township will also be recording the meeting and making it available for viewing via the Township website and YouTube channel. While every effort will be made to ensure the live streaming and website are working, East Lampeter Township takes no responsibility for and cannot be held liable for the unavailability of live streaming in part or in full due to technical issues beyond its control. Live streams and recordings of all meetings remain the property of East Lampeter Township and are protected by copyright. Access to live streams and recordings of meetings is provided for personal and non-commercial use. Video, images, and audio must not be altered, reproduced, or republished without permission of East Lampeter Township. It is suggested that all participants on Zoom mute their microphone during the meeting until they wish to speak, make a motion, or vote. All votes will be taken by roll call so that they can be properly recorded. In order to accommodate public comments at this meeting, the Township will be accepting public comments in writing or via email. Instructions for the submission of public comments are available on the Township website. All those providing public comments will be required to provide their name and address in order for their comments to be read into the record. Inappropriate comments will not be read into the record. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Well, good evening. As you know, John Keeler, our chairman, had retired last year. So I, as chairman, will be starting the meeting this evening. And as indicated, I've called the meeting to order. Also joining this evening on the Planning Commission are Dan McEwen, Roger Rutt, Sarah Ryder, and Randy Patterson. I see there are other members from the public joining us, but in addition to the Planning Commission members, we are also joined by Ralph Hutchinson, Township Manager, and Tara Hitchen, Director in the Township Meeting Room. With that, we'll now proceed with Pledge Allegiance to the flag. And pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we did have two members leave the Planning Commission last November, and we had two new members appointed to the Planning Commission who graciously accepted. It's Randy Patterson and Sarah Ryder. We didn't have agenda items for the December meeting, so unfortunately we're meeting for the first time at the Planning Commission this evening in a new year and a new Planning Commission. So welcome. Thank you for accepting and joining us on the Planning Commission. So first order of business this evening would be reorganization of the Planning Commission. And at this point, I'm opening nominations for chairman or chair of the Planning Commission.
I nominate Daryl Seaholtz for chairperson of the Planning Commission.
A second.
So we have Daryl, myself nominated for chair. Are there any other nominations for chair? If not, I'll close the nominations for chair. Do I have a second for the chair nomination?
Second.
Okay. I'll now open nominations for vice chair.
I'll make a nomination that Roger Rutt be nominated for vice chair.
Okay. We have Roger Rutt nominated for vice chair. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Not hearing any, I will close the nominations for vice chair. Do I have a second for the vice chair nomination?
Second.
Thank you. Now open nominations for secretary.
Nominate Dan McEwen for secretary.
So we have Dan McEwen nominated for secretary. Any other nominations for secretary? Not hearing any. I'll close the nominations for secretary. Do I have a second for the secretary nomination?
Second.
Roger, you nominated
You
that.
nominated, yes.
So you can
Thank you.
second.
So
I'll second. I'll second.
Thank you, Randy.
Randy. Okay. So the slate of officers for the East Lampeter Township Planning Commission for 2021 that have been nominated are myself, Darrell Seasals, for chair, Roger Rutt for vice chair, and secretary Dan McEwen. All those in favor, acknowledge by raising your hand and confirming your favorable vote.
All right.
I show we have all 5 in favor, thus no opposing. So the officers for 2021 calendar year will be myself, Darrell Seasals, chair, Roger Rutt as vice chair, and Dan McEwen as secretary. Thank you. Our next order of business would be approval of the minutes of the November 10th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. Since there was no meeting in December, so we're now approving. So having read and reviewed the minutes on November 10th, is there any discussion on the minutes? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes of November 10th, 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes for November 10th, 2020 as written.
So we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have the motion and the second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Raise your hand. Thank you. Next item on agenda is old business, and at this time there is none. We'll move business. First is Plan 18, McDonald's, 68 East Town Mall, land development. And I believe we have representation.
Hi, good evening. My name is Matt Chartrand. I'm on from Bowler Engineering in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, representing the applicant in this case, which is McDonald's. We also have Ambrose Hines, who is the attorney for this project. I don't know if he has any
I'm here.
camera issues. Okay, you are there, Ambrose? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And I believe Richard Alt is on from McDonald's to answer any questions that you may have relative to operations or otherwise. And also Kirsten Calabro from our office, from Bowler's office, is on as well. More or less just, for additional support if needed kind of thing. She's been coordinating a lot of this stuff in the office, but I can give kind of a brief overview. I do have some plans which we submitted electronically. I don't know if Tara has the ability to share, or if you'd like me to try to screen share, what the best way is for that.
Matt, you have the ability to share your screen.
Okay, let me see if I can figure this out. Start with this if you can see it. This is the this is a copy of the aerial. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. I try to switch my camera too, so it looks a little bit more like I'm looking towards the screen. So This is an existing McDonald's facility at 2090 East Lincoln Highway. It's at the intersection of East Lincoln Highway and South Oakview Road. If I can zoom out it here a little bit, you'll see that it's part of the Easttown Mall Shopping Center. It is its own parcel, but for all intents and purposes, it is an out parcel to that shopping center. So there are some shared facilities, shared driveways, shared parking, things like that that are commonly utilized between the facilities here. So the basic proposal that we have here for this existing facility is to make a modification to the drive-through that right now you've got, and I don't know if everyone can see where I'm pointing on the screen. Can you see that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So right now you've got two ordering points which are in tandem. So where it looks like, yellow Post-it notes almost on the plan, those are canopies over top of the two ordering points that you have. So when you have a tandem drive-through in that configuration, each vehicle is able to place their order. Obviously helps from an efficiency standpoint, but the car that is in the back in that scenario cannot move ahead until the car that's in the front has placed their order. So McDonald's, and I'm sure you may have seen them at some other locations. If not, I can show some photos. Let me see if it screen shares right from here. If I do, can everyone see that now?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Let me see here if I can. Here we go. I got to switch it manually. How about that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a configuration in another location showing what is then a side-by-side drive-through configuration as McDonald's refers to it. And with that, you still have two ordering positions, but those ordering positions are independent of each other in terms of your ability to be able to move ahead. So, if the person, ordering here at this order point is finished first, they can pull ahead. If the person here is finished ordering, they can pull ahead. And that, again, really helps from an overall efficiency standpoint and being able to move the vehicles through the queue. So I'm going to try to switch now over to the site plan if I can, or I'll start with the demolition plan. So the demolition plan, it may be a little bit hard to see here. I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. But you've got the existing McDonald's building here, and this is showing that drive-through configuration as we have it right now. There's parking right now, angled parking leading up to the entry point of the drive-through, and then you continue through, place your order, circulate back around the building, and then can exit back out towards Oakview Road. Under the proposed configuration now, what we've got is that side-by-side drive-through configuration like I talked about. So if I zoom in here a little bit more, you can hopefully see that. But the main drive-through in terms of the lane remains the same. So everybody comes back together right after these two order points. The vehicles proceed forward, come back together into a single file line, pick up their order, and then move on. They're able to basically internally in the McDonald's, track who's pulled forward first, so they know whose order is which as they come out of the drive-through. And it, like I said, really helps from an efficiency standpoint to move through the drive-through. The drive-through usage has gone up significantly in the past years. As you know, we are generally speaking, a society that likes things fast and to keep moving kind of thing. So drive-through has picked up quite considerably. And then now, as you know, with the way things are with COVID and whatnot, that it's become even more so. So as part of this, this is to try to facilitate and get more vehicles through the drive-through efficiently. It's not meant to drive more traffic to our site. It's not meant to, bring more people in. The store is remaining the same in terms of its size, remains the same in terms of, internal setup. But we've just found that there really isn't a need for the level of parking, of people parking and coming into the site. So this does impact 5 parking spaces that existed along this side of the building, which is the west side of the building. We proceeded to the zoning hearing board. We got relief for the drive-through in terms of what was considered to be a second drive-through lane because it split right here. That relief was granted from the zoning hearing board. We went from what would allow us to queue about 9 vehicles within that queuing lane to about 13 now because of that, the ability to split it. And again, we think it really helps from an efficiency standpoint. Parking, like I said, is shared amongst our site and the adjacent shopping center. We have, a number of parking spaces on our site. We are reducing that overall by, like I said, about 5, but we believe that there's sufficient parking within the overall shopping center in excess of what's required by code of about 50 spaces that allows us to balance out the 5 that we're reducing by. That still allows us to be code compliant. We had requested relief from the zoning hearing board relative to that the zoning hearing board did not grant because they felt that there was another mechanism basically for us to get the parking that we needed here without necessitating relief in that regard. Ambrose, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add on that or.
No, just a point of, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So just a point of clarification on that. So the current site was redeveloped in 2007. At the time, under the existing ordinance, it was compliant with the total number of spaces that would be required on the property. So if you look at the dark, we'll go back, Matt, actually.
Okay, sorry.
If you look at the dark outline that's shown here, that's actually the lot that the McDonald's is sitting on. That was created back in the 1970s. At the time of the redevelopment of the site in 2007, the number of spaces needed for the restaurant. Sorry, I thought I heard something. The number of spaces needed for the restaurant existing on site was code compliant. Since the ordinance was amended or revised in 2016, the requirements changed. Now there's actually more spaces that would be required based on the square footages of the restaurant itself. So we're reducing the total number of existing spaces by 5, but technically under the ordinance, it's actually a little bit even more shy of what would be required. But after discussion with the zoning officer, and we do have an agreement with the neighboring shopping center and easement that's existing that allows us to utilize spaces on the shopping center. And there are provisions of the ordinance that allow for us to have or provide for the required off-street parking on the adjoining lot. So our view is, and looking at the numbers, there's sufficient parking to make up that, and that this would still be zoning compliant based on that.
Okay. Are there any, I guess, questions in regard to the zoning relief that we received on this, or any other questions in regard to what I noted earlier or what Ambrose just said? Okay. From our standpoint, like I said, this qualifies as a land development, although the existing McDonald's will continue to remain as developed on the site. The remainder of the parking will stay. There's no other changes to driveways or anything off-site. We are also not adding any new impervious to our site. We're only developing within the area that is currently impervious right now. So we're not triggering any additional, runoff or need for stormwater management from that regard. But we did file this as a land development plan, and as such received comment letters back from your engineer and from the county relative to their review of our plan. The comment letter from David Miller and Associates, really the majority of which is notes and some things that they'd like some clarification from on the plan itself, which obviously we don't have any issue with. There are four particular comments in there that we would respectfully ask for a waiver on, if it's of the Planning Commission's view that those are things that can be waived and recommended to the board. I'm happy to go through the letter in its entirety if you'd like, or I'm happy to just focus on the waivers that we're requesting and note that the remainder of the letter would be a will comply, whichever you would like.
Well, as you mentioned, yeah, we have a November 30th letter from Dave Miller and Associates. And we also have county comments from November 24th.
Correct.
We don't need to go through each of those unless, the first general issue with coming in compliance with the recommendations.
Matt, what I would suggest, so Matt, what I would suggest is let's at least go through, just briefly touch on the items that we'd be requesting waivers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and if you have that letter for reference, I can reference which particular comments these waivers are applicable to. And I would just note, that there are some comments in here relative to zoning and zoning compliance. We believe, a couple of them were actually questioning the prior relief and whether or not it was granted, because this letter, like you said, was back in November. And I think some of that decision had not been rendered at that point in time. But we intend to, address each of these comments with our resubmission. We do not believe that there's any need for additional relief as it relates to this project. So again, moving forward from there beyond the zoning comments and into the subdivision and land development comments on page 3, the first waiver that we're asking for, and I apologize if not everyone has a copy of the actual letter itself. Oh, there it is. Okay. But there was, okay, that's a comment or a copy of the letter from the township engineer. But we also submitted a copy of a letter today just outlining the 4 waivers that we're asking for. It is dated January 12th. Obviously, we're happy to share that into the record of this Planning Commission meeting. But the first waiver is in regard to comment number 1, and that's really to ask that this be considered as a preliminary and final plan together. We've got, obviously, like I noted before, a very small area of reconfiguration, if you will, for our drive-through. This is not a comprehensive new plan with new driveways and parking and other things. We're not adding new trips into the system for traffic or anything like that. And again, I think we believe that the comments in this letter are minor enough that we would like this to be moved forward as a preliminary and final plan together, if possible. And it's noted in that comment that they recommend that the applicant submit a written waiver request with a justification for the plan. So we have done that.
Are you all seeing the letter on the screen from Bowler dated today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that was in relation to comment number one. And again, I don't know if you want to discuss them individually or if you would rather take the four in total and then find out, or find out if there's any discussion on, but I'll continue to move through. So the second waiver listed there from section 403B is relative to plan scale overall. So what we're requesting is to allow us to reduce the plan scale from 1 inch equals 50 feet or 1 to 100 to 1 to 20. And that really is just from a legibility standpoint. This is a small site, about 0.5, just a little over 0.5 acres. So at 1 inch equals 50 feet or 1 inch equals 100 feet, it's going to be very, very difficult to read any information on that. So it's just from a plan presentation standpoint. The third waiver, and I'm sorry, that was comment number 4 on the subdivision and land development comments. The third waiver was in regard to comment number 16. And this is kind of a broad brush sort of general comment, it seems, relative to this particular section, which is 503A11. And that is noted in the comment letter that all existing streets at the perimeter or within a proposed development shall be improved according to township specifications, right-of-ways shown, things of that nature. We have shown the right-of-ways on our plan. The property line has been surveyed and marked, as you can see, or as you could see on the plan that I showed before. All the dimensions are on there. We can add some dimensions relative to the right-of-way itself. But for a development of this nature, which is really just, like I said, a reconfiguration of the parking lot, first of all, we don't believe that there are any additional road widening, turning lanes, anything else needed along this particular portion. You've got, I think, looking at it earlier, I think there's 8 lanes along East Lincoln Highway along our frontage, and another 6 lanes along South Oakview Road along our frontage. And we believe, A, that that's more than sufficient, and B, that we wouldn't be doing anything on our site, like I said, generating more trips, bringing more vehicles in or anything like that, that would warrant additional work within the right of way. And the last that we have is related to comment number 19 on the township engineer's letter. And there was a comment in there relative to sidewalk and sidewalk placement being no closer than 2 feet from the edge of the street or parking compound, unless the sidewalk is widened to a minimum of 6 feet. Really, and again, I know you can't see the existing or the site plan that we have up there now, unless, Terry, you're able to get back to that. But I can point out the small area that we're talking about is along the west side of the building, along the edge of the drive-through. It's an existing situation, existing curb line that's there. Yeah, so you can see that there's a ramp that we have proposed in there, which is really for loading, being able to bring material in and out through the back door of the McDonald's facility. But that existing sidewalk is about 5.3 feet wide. This is, like I said, consistent with the way that it is right now. We're not proposing to change anything. We're not making it worse than it currently is. But, in order to widen out to 6 feet, we need to push everything else out with it. And on a small site like we have, like I said, at 0.5 acres, every inch matters, if you will, as we're going through the design. So this would be, again, something that we would request a waiver from, being that it is an existing situation. And we think the 5.3 feet, it certainly meets, ADA code requirements. There's no obstructions or anything else there that allows for the free movement of pedestrians along that side of the building. So those are the 4 waivers in total that we're asking for Everything else, in regard to the letter, like I said, there's some points of clarification that we may need to go back and forth with the zoning officer. There's some points of clarification just on some plan items, but we believe that all of those can be addressed with our resubmission, and everything else in this letter is a will comply. So I don't have anything else, in terms of, presentation on this. If you have any items that you would like to discuss further, or if you're willing to consider the waivers and consider the application to move it ahead, that would be our request this evening.
Okay. I was having some connection problems, and my apologies. And in reference to those waivers, item 16, I think the concern was that the dimensions were not included on the plan. And that goes in with item 17, indicating what the dimensions should be for South Oakview Road and State Route 30.
Yeah, again, I think we can certainly add the dimensions of the spacing of the curb as it is right now. We can add dimensions for what we have for the right of way and the information that we have relative to it. Really, the request for a waiver from that was relative to any additional improvements that could be foreseen. Obviously, East Lincoln Highway is a state highway. We don't have any access directly to it. We don't have any driveway. We're not doing any work within the right of way. We would prefer to stay out of PennDOT's way in terms of anything on this particular project. Obviously, we can add what information we have, but the waiver was really from the aspect of not requiring additional improvement if there is something relative to that in that particular section.
Typically what's done, and without having the dimensions showing on the plan, if the dimensions do meet the current requirements, then a waiver would not be necessary. If they do not, and we'll see what the motion brings, but if they are not up to the current dimensions, once you label those on the plan, typically what we see is a request for a deferral as opposed to a waiver. I'm doing that work now, but if sometime in the future the township decides, or the state in the case of Route 30, then there would be a commitment necessary to participate in those improvements if and when they're ever done in the future, as opposed to a waiver. So it would be a deferral request as opposed to a waiver.
Okay. Well, I would note there is existing sidewalk. You can see that on the aerial, I think, that was presented earlier, but there's existing sidewalk that comes along the entirety of the frontage of our site. As you start to fan out beyond that into the shopping center and, a little bit further down. But yeah, if you look along Oakview and certainly our frontage all the way to the point of where the Red Lobster building is, there's sidewalk along that. Those improvements have been done. There's, ADA access and points of exiting to the crosswalks at the intersection. So again, really our hope is that the Planning Commission would take into consideration here the minimal nature of the work being done here, the fact that this is an improved site already, the fact that we're really not changing traffic patterns or bringing new traffic into the site. We're only looking to service those customers more efficiently than what we have, than to leave kind of some open-ended deferral there towards something that, again, we may or may not have any impact on, but it may impact our frontage. if something else comes into the shopping center and they're developing, and that is going to bring a lot more traffic in, that could have a bigger impact really at the end of the day than the McDonald's does. And even though we are part of that shopping center, we're not part of their overall land area. So we just want to try to, for all intents and purposes, keep this to what it is, and try to minimize the amount of potential for additional improvement based off of what we're doing right here, right now.
Right. Well, understood. The other part that plays a factor in this is part of the Western Gateway that's on the transportation plan as part of the Route 30 streetscape. And McDonald's is at the western end of that. I don't know if you've looked at that, but as part of that, there is a trail system that would be on the east side of McDonald's and on the west side of Oakview Road. So with that streetscape plan for Route 30, part of that is when the opportunity arises that improvements could be made for that Route 30 corridor. And some have been done already. If you've been out Route 30, towards the east, that have enhanced the Route 30 corridor in multiple ways, from vehicular and pedestrian improvements. And there are some items included within that plan that do impact this area of Route 30. And I don't know if you've seen that or what consideration you've given. Again, that depending on the motion that's made, might be a condition of the Planning Commission's approval to move forward, when we get to that point. But I think that needs a serious consideration as part of this process.
I don't know if I can screen share back here, if that's at all possible.
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, let me see if I can get to this here. Okay, can you see that here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our frontage along Oakview Road. So you mentioned, that there are streetscape requirements, and we did get a chance to take a look at that. There was a comment in the county's letter relative to this, suggestion that this be looked at. Looking at that portion along Oakview Road, I should say that it's, rather narrow. The edge of the right-of-way kind of follows the edge of the sidewalk, but there is sidewalk there, as I mentioned before. So part of that plan for the streetscape calls for, trails and pedestrian access and the ability to get people to and through there. We believe that exists right now with the sidewalk the way that we have it. In terms of landscaping and improvements here, you can see that there's, a mix of trees, low plantings, mid-height shrubs to help, with screening and giving a varied degree of landscaping along that portion that, this predates, if you will, probably the latest plan that you're talking about relative to what the county was referencing and what you're referencing for the streetscape. But we believe that a lot of these elements already exist here today, and that we don't have, a lot of flexibility to make significant changes within those areas. But we believe that we've done, quite a bit here. It's been landscaped, manicured, it's well maintained. This is not some overgrown area along our frontage. And if I slide this out here a little bit more, you can get that view from Oakview and see what I'm talking about, with the varied heights and everything else for the plantings and the landscaping through there, which it really extends, all the way up to and includes the intersection itself. Along East Lincoln Highway, as you proceed around the corner here, the edge of the right of way really follows again the edge of the sidewalk, which happens to coincide with the edge of our parking. So there's really nothing additional that we could do there that would be on our site without additionally impacting parking and our internal layout the way that it is right now, without going out into the right of way. And PennDOT certainly isn't going to allow us to put any other plantings or anything else in that narrow space between the sidewalk and the edge of curb. But like I said, if you look down Oakview, you can see all the way down here, we've got that, sidewalk access. We've got new ramps here at the intersection. And we really feel that this hopefully meets the intent of what is being looked at in terms of the streetscape for the township.
Okay. So, yeah, in regards to that letter of November 30th from DMA, the general comments, the zoning, of course, you've addressed with the zoning hearing board, and we'll have to satisfy our zoning officer with those items.
Yep.
The subdivision we've discussed, the waivers, there were 22 comments there. Are there any others that you have issue with coming in compliance with?
No, those were the only 4 that we were requesting direct relief on. Ambrose, did you have anything else to add? Or
No, I think the others, they're just a matter of satisfying the engineer, and I think we can work with the engineer on resolving any clarification issues.
Right, and then 1 stormwater management. Okay.
yeah, which is effectively just saying that we aren't adding any additional impervious to the system or doing anything else that would impact the stormwater.
And then we also had a November 24th letter, memorandum from the county, which had 3 comments. The one was, as mentioned already, item 1, site design comment. The plan should consider streetscape elements recommended in the 2015 Lincoln Highway Streetscape. We've discussed that. Item 2 is bicycle racks should be provided so that employees and patrons have the option of bicycling to the restaurant. And the other is a procedural, just Lancaster County Planning file number need added to the plan.
Certainly the file number is not a problem. I just would note, in regard to the bicycle racks, I think we'd be happy to do whatever the pleasure of the planning commission is and the township's position on this. The facility has been existing for a long time. Like I said, it isn't new. I don't think that there's, and maybe if Richard wants to speak to this, but whether or not there's any, employees right now that would utilize that. If not, again, it could be provided. We just have to find a sufficient area to be able to do so.
Any questions or comments from the Planning Commission?
Just have one. Matt, could you just talk a little bit more from the aerial perspective? Are you decreasing the width of that exit lane to provide for the 2 drive-through lanes and the impact on the 2 ADA spaces?
So there is no, in terms of the exit lane after you come back through here. So the work that we're doing, the primary work that we're doing is at this southwest corner of the building. Like I mentioned before, we're eliminating 5 parking spaces along here right now. And the side of the building on the east side will remain unchanged. So we're not narrowing anything there. Those vehicles will continue to queue and exit the way that they do right now. The comment, and I think there was a comment in the letter, sort of, talking about that aspect of would we potentially be impacting the parking. I would tell you right now, that condition exists for what it's worth. It also is not different than what we have at many of our other sites for McDonald's. I actually think that we are significantly improving the situation with the plan as we have it right now, or what we're proposing. Because if you look at it, with these queuing points here coming back around beyond just the ADA spaces, which are the furthest away from that, you've got, 5 other spaces here that are impacted at this point in time. So the elimination of those 5 spaces, and also the addition of 4 vehicles now, which can fit into the queue of the drive-through. Like I said, previously we had 9, I think, before we hit this point here where we started to get to the point where that car might be impacted. Now we've got 13 that can fit in there, up to the point where it would potentially have any impact on the ADA parking spaces. So I think from an efficiency standpoint, like I said, McDonald's is looking to do this to continue to move cars through as quickly as possible. So this is only going to help. So the 13 vehicles hopefully never get to that point that we're beyond that, but it would be extremely minimal in terms of, the impact to those particular parking spaces. And I'm sure anyone who's done a drive-through before understands is, whether it be McDonald's or any other service that you're using, there are courtesy gaps that people will give to, others trying to back in, back out, get into a space, whatever it might be. So we do not believe this to be anything of significance that would cause any impact to either A, that parking, or B, the queuing of the drive-through.
And Matt, just to clarify, the exit lane at the southwest corner of the site, we're not narrowing that in any way as part of this design.
Part.
Correct.
Correct. That is not being impacted at this point. Basically, our edge of again, the edge of our lot more or less falls very close to that line. So we're not further restricting that.
And my last question is just address the loading situation then. I'm assuming you load into those doors on that side. How will loading not impact the queuing to your drive-throughs?
Well, and Richard, feel free to jump in if you want to talk through any of this, but loading basically occurs, at off hours. It's an existing condition on a small site like we have it here right now. They come in late at night, so there's not an impact to, drive through at any sort of peak times. They would be able to pull up along the side of the building, not necessarily directly in the drive-through lane. They drop pallets, and those pallets are kind of quickly moved into the building. So there's the situation and the way that we have it now, I think, again, helps. The additional ramp that we're adding back there is not from an ADA standpoint. It's from an ease of being able to bring materials in and out of the building. And we already have a ramp associated further up for the ADA parking. So the additional ramp that we're adding back here, which happens to align with where we've got that striped island, if you will, on the plan, if you have that, that's for that ease of being able to move material in and out of the building, or not out, but into the building, I should say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from the Planning Commission?
Daryl, I'd just like to point out that the improvements along Route 30 are part of the Western Gateway project, as you indicated, and they are on the tip at this point in time. And so what happens there is Route 462 terminates at the entrance of Easttown Mall. And this is really for the benefit of our new Planning Commission members, because I know the Planning Commission members that have been on here a while have heard this multiple times. Matt, I'm going to take back over control here. Sorry, give me 1 second. Can everyone see this aerial map?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so as you're traveling eastbound on 462, you would turn and terminate here at a traffic light intersection. 30 would also stop at the traffic light intersection. All traffic would move eastbound at a fully functional Oakview Road. Right now, if you're traveling on 462, you can turn north or continue eastward. If you're traveling on 30 eastbound, you can turn right or south onto South Oakview Road or continue eastbound on Route 30. What will happen here is you'll be able to proceed eastbound and make any turn or continue eastbound on Route 30. Those improvements are part of the Western Gateway project, which is on the tip. Another portion of the streets, that all was part of the Route 30 streetscape plan. Another portion of the streetscape plan is to have a 12-foot multi-use trail that traverses from Strasburg Pike over to Hartman Bridge through various avenues along the corridor. One of those, which the township has been rewarded money for, is from Strasburg Pike through the park, along the back of East Town Mall, and northbound on South Oakview Road on the west side of South Oakview Road. Like I said, that's a 12-foot multi-use trail that would come on this side of Oakview Road, and then that then continues on Lincoln Highway. So
Karen, I could not see where you were pointing per se. When you said this side of Oakview Road, which side were you referring to?
The McDonald's side of Oakview Road. The west side of Oakview Road, or east side of the McDonald's property. So it would be right in this general area, as it calls for a 5-foot grass strip, which is approximately what is currently there, and then a 12-foot multi-use trail. But we do have 2 members of the Planning Commission here tonight, so I want to be sure that they're aware of that project.
Sarah, I think the overhead that you're using is not the overhead that's on the screen.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it appears to be frozen on mine.
Yeah.
Were you able to follow my directions?
No, that's why I know it's not the same picture.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it might have just been me. I have had some connection issues, and now it's moving, but.
Can everyone see this aerial view?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yeah, your hand's at the intersection, yes.
Do you see my hand on the left side of the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Lower left, yes.
Yes, so the trail comes in this general direction and then north on South Oakview Road, and then continues down or east on Route 30.
Got it.
Just a question, why doesn't the trail cross over and go on the east side of Oakview, since it's going to go right down Route 30? Wouldn't it make more sense? It looks like there's more available open space on the other side to do that.
Actually, Dan, this is actually all a stormwater easement area.
Okay.
So Tara, how does that impact this project? If that's going to be I see it's going to be adjacent to the McDonald's, but how does that impact this?
So I'm uncertain of the width of this sidewalk here at this point in time. But it would either increase the width of this sidewalk or a new macadam path or concrete path would be established here.
And Tara, I just wanted to point out, I think that that sidewalk is actually located in the right of way. And Matt can correct me on that, but
That's correct.
Yeah. So, you know, and I'm not sure what the distance is within the right of way between that sidewalk and our property line or what. But, you know, I don't know that there isn't, I mean, certainly there would be sufficient room if that's another 6 feet would be added to that path or.
Yeah, effectively, our property line coincides with what would be call it the back edge of that sidewalk.
Well, I think it comes back to then whether it should be a waiver or a deferral. And I think basically what we're seeing here, that since there may be a requirement for a wider sidewalk there or a bike trail or something, that this should be, any improvements to the sidewalk should be deferred at this point until time when the supervisors recommend moving ahead. I can see where a waiver to the street improvements, because I think any street improvements will be due to the Route 30 area primarily, and that's a PennDOT situation there.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that the waiver to the sidewalk isn't really related to that that sidewalk. The waiver to the sidewalk related to the sidewalk that was directly adjacent to the building. The sidewalk that's there now, I believe, is compliant with what the SALDO would require. I think what Tara's talking about in terms of the streetscape and the corridor plan with this additional macadam, I don't know what the mechanism exactly. It's not, I don't believe, part of the subdivision requirements. So it's not really something that we would need a waiver from at this point as part of this plan. But you know, we'd have to look at exactly what the mechanism for the intention on how that would be established and exactly where. I haven't looked at the specific documents related to that project.
So your request for a waiver is for the sidewalk on the other side of the building. Is that what?
Yeah, the request for the waiver really had nothing to do with this particular sidewalk. Yeah, no, that.
Just to clarify that, I had noted earlier, because I was looking at a dimension on the plan, I noted 5.3 feet. It looks like the closest point from curb to building in that scenario is 4.9 feet. And that's listed in the waiver request that we have here tonight. But again, from an ADA compliance standpoint, you know, and anything above, certainly as you get above 4 feet is certainly compliant. So it's just less than the 6 that was required. But again,
right, and I think that relates, there's a little bump out in the building there that pinches the sidewalk at that location.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that was a notation on the part of our engineer that it didn't meet the requirements, but you know, your explanation this evening as part of your waiver request, you know, may provide sufficient justification, and that should, you know, be explained before you go to the supervisors, and with your resubmission to the township for the township engineer's review. The other part, I think, and you had mentioned, you know, there is a landscape area there. And in reference to Tara's explanation, it may require the removal of some of the landscaping to get the 12-foot path as part of that trail system. But at this point, it's not been addressed, and I think that needs to be addressed as part of the tip and the western gateway to with the Route 30 streetscape. And at some, you know, but we'll see where the motion goes. But that is an important part of the Route 30 streetscape from the township's perspective. Were there any other comments from Planning Commission? Any comments from the general public? Any emails or requests, Tara?
Give me 1 second, I'm taking a look. No, there is not.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll look for a motion.
I'd look to our more experienced members to make the motion.
Well, I'll make a motion. They'll have to help me through it maybe a little bit because I do not have a copy of David Miller's letter or our agenda, so I don't have the plan numbers here. So I'll make a motion that the preliminary and final plan for McDonald's be approved, and that the waiver request for the final plan and preliminary plan be put together as one. The waiver for scale be approved, and the street improvements and sidewalk waivers be approved also. With that, I would recommend submitting approval to the township supervisors. You have to clean it up a little bit, Daryl, because I don't have all the numbers and everything on this thing.
Okay. Question, Dan, for the waivers referred, were you recommending a waiver on the right-of-way and cartway and sidewalk, or?
Yes, a waiver rather than deferral.
Deferral for either of those?
No, I was recommending a waiver from both of them.
Okay. And also then come in compliance with the other items within the letter?
Yes, yes. And again, like I said, I don't have a copy of all that, so you'll have to help me through. I'm assuming they will come into compliance with whatever is in that letter, which I haven't seen.
To the satisfaction of our engineer?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we also had the letter from the County Planning Commission dated November 20th.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did get that letter. Okay. And that.
Would you like to include that in your?
Include that recommendations, and if they can at all put bicycle racks, I think it would be, since we are looking at a bicycle pathway up through there, I think would be advantageous to customers at least to have bicycle racks there. Maybe the employees won't use it, but yeah, I think we're looking for customers, people coming up through there, maybe even people who live down in the east, what's that called, the Eastwood Meadows area, might bike up there for lunch, dinner, or something like that, and that might be convenient for them to have that.
And did you have any comment in regards to the Route 30 streetscape and the tip and trail improvements?
Well, I'm not sure how that ties in, other than it is there. I mean, how do you make I'm not sure how to recommend anything on that and part of a motion.
If you wanted, your recommendation could be conditioned upon review of that plan and demonstrating, if those improvements could be achieved on the property in accordance with that streetscape plan and the tip.
All right. Well, then I would recommend that they do review the streetscape plan and incorporate any recommendations, if at all possible. I can see there's limited area there that they can possibly do any improvements, but maybe at least on Oakview they could do something. I don't think Route 30's got to give them a whole lot of room, but Oakview, there may be some room that they could change to come in compliance with the recommendations of the streetscape plan.
Okay. Any other comments on it? I'm going to impose on Tara to see if she is able to state the motion that you've made as she's recorded it.
So recommend approval of the waiver for scale, of the waiver for preliminary final, of the waiver of interior sidewalks next to the building, of the curb and roadway widening requirements, and then recommend approval of the plan coming into compliance with the comments of the David Miller Associates letter of November 30th, the Lancaster County Planning Commission letter of 11/24, and those are both of 2020, which includes providing a bike rack somewhere on the site, and upon reviewing the Route 30 streetscape to determine if improvements can be implemented, especially along Oakview Road. Does that sound like?
That sounds like my motion.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
And we have the second. Any discussion? If not, I'll take a vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So Darrell and Dan and Sarah and Randy said approved, and Roger was negative. With the 4 in favor, the motion is passed. Thank you for your presentation this evening. Your very clear explanation of the issues in the proposed work, and good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for your input. And we look forward to moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Township
Thank you very much.
Apply and the township engineers review before you head to the supervisors.
We'll address that with the engineer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item of business is line number 2019, the Mary and Levi King, 12 Hedgewood Avenue. Do we have a representative?
We do. Roger Fry is here in person. Can everyone hear Roger? Okay. Can everyone hear Roger?
No.
No.
Not too well.
You get a little closer, Roger.
Levi and Mary King own the property at 12 Hedgewood. Property to the west is owned by Michael and Sarah Morley and Bendel and Lydia King. There's a family relation. I'm not sure exactly how they're related.
I'm having difficulty understanding. Are others?
Yes.
Yes.
You've got some of an echo or tunnel kind of voice that's maybe too far from the mic.
Is it better now? Can you hear me better now?
A little bit. Yep.
Okay, the properties that we're talking about are number 12 and number 8 Hedgewood. Basically, family members sharing or owning adjoining lots. Number 12 owned by Levi and Mary Ann. Their western boundary is only a couple of feet from their dwelling. The property at 8 is scheduled to be sold in the near future. So they're taking the opportunity to propose annexing a strip of ground 9 feet wide to number 12. That is what we're proposing. There's no improvements proposed by the plan. That is the full measure of what we're looking to do. We've asked for a few waivers. First being a waiver of preliminary plan processing. That is a pretty standard waiver, and you can see with the simple nature of this plan, it's probably warranted. Second is plan scale. The plan has been drawn at a scale of 1 inch equals 30 feet to be more visible, more easily read. So again, that's the type of waiver that the board is typically supported. We've also asked for deferment of street improvements and sidewalk installation. Hedgewood is a dead-end street. There's limited amount of traffic and lots on the street. The existing roadway is not wide, but the improvements are very close to the roadway, so making improvements along that drive would be very difficult and almost an intrusion into the way the properties are used now. Number 6 on the review is just stating that we would include any action on the plan, which we, of course, we would do once we know what that action is. Under zoning, we revised a note and some listing on the plan in response to David Miller's latest review. I did forward a digital copy of our response to David Miller yesterday and included a mailing of a hard copy. I did get a receipt, a return receipt of my email to Scott Payne, and he said he would get to the review as soon as possible, that he felt there was any real issues, but I don't have a response specifically to these comments. Number 2, driveway intersections. We've added clear sight triangles as we're able to. The existing properties currently, number 8 shares access with the property to the west. I'm going to say it's number 6. I'm assuming that's the actual address number, but it's the property directly to the west. The King share driveway partially with the property owner to the east of that. We kind of discussed with Mr. King about preparing some sort of documented shared drive. He said there's no real issues, although he and his neighbor don't particularly get along well. They're not in any kind of dispute, but they are not particularly friendly either. The shared area of the drive is just really a connection. There's very little actual shared component to that driveway. The number 8 property, that driveway is and always has been a shared driveway. It was designed that way and it's always been utilized that way. There's no issues there whatsoever. The boundary line goes down the center of the driveway and it's been used like that since I think the property's probably been developed, at least the property to the west. And when I talk about development, I'm talking about improvements that were made to the rear of the original homes that were constructed on the property. Under subdivision and land development, David Miller said they're going to review our legal descriptions for closures on our property. Hopefully there's no error. We do check our work pretty thoroughly. I don't expect there'll be any issue there. Number 2, again, talks about the shared right-of-way. I don't have any real restrictions listed and nothing recorded that affects those driveways. Certainly the Kings can utilize their driveway without impacting the neighbor. They do not need to be on the neighbor's property. It's really diverse. And we're not aware of any problem or question on number 8 as far as those drives are. We've worked around the properties and we've had conversations with neighbors as well as the owners. There's been no issues that were brought to our attention through the process. Number 3 deals with financial security. The only financial issue would be setting pins and we would supply a letter to that. We typically wait till we get at least past the planning commission meeting before we set pins and finalize things, just in case there's something we missed that comes to light. So if this board supports our plan tonight, we would get out there and get those pins set and prepare that letter. The County Planning Commission, I did not respond with a written review because their only real comment is adding their file number, which we actually put on the plan as soon as they notify us that they've received the plan and supply that number to us. So that's been added along. The second item is just the notification that we should make arrangements to record the plan prior to coming to the courthouse. Typically these days we just mail the plan in and don't actually go face to face at the courthouse. So we're hoping for a conditional plan approval recommendation and support of our waiver request, waiver and deferment request.
Okay,
I'm happy to answer any questions also. I did go pretty quick there.
All right. Any questions, comments from the Planning Commission?
So although there may be no shared driveway or access agreements at this point in time, and everyone may get along to the point where they can utilize the driveways in a neighborly way, we don't know who the future owners will be and whether or not they'll get along with their neighbors. And so shared access or driveway agreements should be considered as part of the recommendation.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the one thing you didn't address, Roger, was the recommendation in the letter of a written agreement. And the exact same thing that was just said, that, you know, things are good today, but who knows about tomorrow. So a written agreement would, I think, be necessary to move forward, but we'll see what the recommendation will include for the motion. Any other comments, questions? If not, I'll look for a motion on the Mary and Levy King 12 Hedgewood Avenue property. While the motion's being prepared, Roger, I did note on your plan, I believe it is Hedgewood Avenue, but your location map has it Hedgewood Drive.
So I'll make a motion concerning East Lampeter Project 2020-19, Levi B. King. Going down through the modifications and waivers. Recommendation number one, that the preliminary plan request be granted. The second, the scale of the plan be granted. And deferral on sidewalks, number three, deferral rather than a waiver. The township requests that being brought into their plan, that the landowner would need to comply with that desire. Same with number four, the curbs, sidewalks, that being a deferral. And number five also agreed to be a deferral. You'll comply with the general, and the applicant will bring the zoning questions into compliance. Subdivision land development, that be brought into into compliance, and also that the applicant should make every effort to get a cross agreement on the document agreement on the shared driveway, since we don't know who the next owners are going to be. So that that would be very important at this point, and you're actually protecting both landowners because a future landowner may not even want to purchase a property without an agreement in place.
Anything further, Roger?
I have nothing.
County comments?
Oh. County comment, the applicant stated that they put the file number on the plan. And just to come into compliance with what the county's requesting.
The county review of December 15th.
December 15th, correct.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 So noted. All five have.
Just for the record, there was no public comment.
Oh, thank you, Tara. Okay. And Roger, I think as you're aware, that agreement that was recommended is subject to the solicitor's review approval.
Not for a shared driveway. Not for a shared driveway.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Nice to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
Okay. Thank you. Next item is an informal discussion of the Zook Yoder Esch Lot Number 1 development potential. I believe that's yours, Tara.
Actually, that's
We have somebody present.
Ken and Brad.
Good evening. Good to see everybody this 2021 year. Hey, before we jump into this, I'll just like to offer, does anybody need a quick break? I know you guys have been on camera for going on an hour and a half now, while Brad and I have been able to get up and leave our desk. So if you guys need that, we're willing to give you a few minutes if anybody needs it.
We have a lot of smiles. I think we're okay.
We're good.
Hearing no motion, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Well, look, good to see everybody this evening. I'm Ken Hornbeck with High Real Estate Group. With us tonight, Brad Mowbray, who is our Senior Vice President of Residential, and Mark Stanley, council who I think you're all familiar with. Let me start off by offering a very warm welcome to Randy and Sarah. Very good to see you all on the Planning Commission this year, and we look forward to working closely with you for a long time to come. So good to see you guys. As Tara suggested, we're here tonight we wanted to have an informal discussion regarding a potential text amendment to the BP zoning, which for those of you who aren't familiar, the BP zone really applies to what is about 99% of the lands owned by High Real Estate Group near the Greenfield Road, Route 30 convergence. You've probably heard us refer to it as Greenfield Corporate Center in the past, and with a recent kind of rebranding and repositioning of Greenfield, we now do refer to it just as Greenfield. We're trying to move away from the corporate center or the business park kind of name. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move on and what that rebranding is trying to accomplish as we continue to kind of evolve and look to the future. So again, just a conversation this evening, and you know, we'll see where it goes and answer any questions you might have. But just to kind of give some of our new members some background who may not be super familiar with the history of Greenfield, about literally 10 years ago in 2010, so almost 11 years ago, we started down a path with East Lampeter Township to take a look at a new zoning for Greenfield that would offer us and the township flexibility to let Greenfield really become more of a destination to become the center for business in East Lampeter Township. And over a number of years, with a lot of help and a lot of hard work by township staff and you know, some of us on our side, we finally got to a point around 13, 14. The timetable escapes me exactly, where a BP zone, and Tara, jump in if I'm getting the dates wrong, but a new zoning ordinance was adopted by the township, which we refer to as the BP zone. BP stands for Business Park. And I'll put some exhibits up on the screen in a few minutes to, again, kind of refresh everyone's memory. But the adoption of the BP zone at the time and the subsequent text amendments that have been adopted since then, as you guys updated your zoning ordinance at least once since then, did exactly that. And it offered Greenfield some tremendous flexibility so that we and by association the township could let Greenfield really truly become a destination. And as a result of that rezoning, and as a result of the things that we have going on now and the development we've continued with over the past 10 years, we're really starting to see that evolution come to fruition as Greenfield being a place. Brad will speak to a little bit more in a few minutes, but if you've seen any of our rebranding materials, we're really refer to Greenfield as a place to live, work, play, and stay, right? You can work there. We all know it's a business center. You can live there. We have residential amenities. You can stay there through the hotels, or you can play there through, you know, some of the open space and other amenities that we offer. And we've been very grateful with our relationship with East Lampeter Township. I think we've got a very strong working relationship with the township. And I think we would all agree it's paid tremendous dividends over the years as a result of those efforts. So that's some of the background for some of the new members of the Planning Commission. We're here tonight to specifically talk a little bit more about the multifamily component of that zoning ordinance. But before I move on, I might just open the floor to Brad and see if there's anything else he wants to add to kind of that history and description.
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, and thanks again. Appreciate that, Ken, and thanks for hearing us. One of the things that over the last 10 years, if you went back to 2010 and looked at sort of the conversations we were having internally, I don't think we ever would have thought Greenfield would have evolved in the way that it has, just because not knowing at the time that we were going to be bringing the Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences to our campus back in, I guess that was 2016, and being able to grow some of the educational side of Greenfield that is now leading into more medical and healthcare opportunities for growth down the road. So, you know, building really on some of the traction that we're getting within Greenfield, it's a place for community, it's a place for health and wellness, for beauty. Obviously, we spend a lot of time and effort on making sure that the campus truly has wonderful walking trails and ability for folks to enjoy some of the natural amenities that are within that 600-acre campus, if you will. And so when you look at sort of our evolution, we've been able to grow the educational side of our offerings. We've also brought or will be bringing Armstrong's global headquarters to campus, which is two buildings that are about 56,000 square feet, and then another 30,000 square feet in the existing building that they'll be expanding into. And so when you look at just the growth that's happening from not only the commercial side, we've always had warehouse and industrial, but it's also adding in these other amenities and features, which I think, lends itself to that new moniker that we have, which is to live, work, play, and stay. We're also seeing some really good traction on the retail side. So having, the shops available to us and being able to, grow some of our offerings there to support our residents and our businesses and our tenants there is something that is, happening rapidly. And I think as we look at the overall housing nature of the community, we want to be able to offer a variety of types, and we do that through our manufactured housing property, which is currently Eastwood Village Homes. And then we also have our multifamily assets with Greenfield Estates and the Reserve at Greenfield. And so I think we've been able to really meet some of the market demand, but when you look at sort of the fact we're full, we're running at about 98, 99% occupancy, did all throughout 2020 at that level and continue to be in that level. So I think there's a continuing demand for housing within Greenfield that not only complements the growth that we're having in some of these other areas, but also kind of goes along with the overall direction that we see for Greenfield going forward.
I'll stop there and see if anybody has any questions. If not, I was going to pull up an exhibit that just kind of shows the overall Greenfield holdings that we can point out some things, but if there are any questions, we're happy to take them, or we can keep moving on. It's up to y'all.
I think we're ready to move on, Ken.
All right.
Thank you.
Sarah, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay with you.
Go right ahead.
All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a very high level view of what we refer to as Greenfield. Route 30 runs east-west kind of at the bottom of the aerial. Greenfield Road runs to the north up to and terminates at Willow Road, which also runs east-west. And Willow Road is kind of the northern boundary of the BP zone. It's also the urban growth boundary, as a reminder for some folks. This bright green linear component on the west side is the Route 23/Walnut Street extension that I think everyone's aware that we're working on. The 1.1 mile extension of Walnut Street, which will come up to a traffic circle and then head east and connect over to Ben Franklin Boulevard, just at the southeast corner of the Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences. And then Ben Franklin Boulevard continues eastward past our new manufactured home community, or the expansion, I should say, of Eastwood Village, past the new Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology facility that's currently under construction, turns north, and also terminates at Willow Road on the north. So the kind of darker colored buildings that you see on this aerial just represent all of the existing buildings within Greenfield. We have a few holdings on the south side of Route 30, But technically, if I'm not mistaken, Tara, those on the south side of 30 are not in the BP zone. It's just everything north of Route 30.
That's correct. I believe they're zoned I2.
I believe that's correct. So even though we're showing this as kind of the exhibit of Greenfield, for the purposes of the discussion, the holdings south of 30 are not in the BP zone currently. And
I just want to point out one other thing of clarification, Ken. The reserve at Greenfield, which is that location that you're seeing by your cursor, and 315 Pitney Road just to the southeast, are actually now within the ownership of High Properties. So just while we continue the conversation, that is one thing I wanted to point out.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Brad. Good catch. This exhibit not quite updated, but we do have the 82 unit 4-story reserve multifamily building that sits adjacent to the church off of Pitney Road and Greenfield Road. And we did acquire 315 Pitney Road last year over here along Pitney Road. The parcels shown in kind of the bolder green and white, this is really kind of a master plan we put together some years ago. So these parcels in the green and white were a vision at the time of what we might do with some of our still undeveloped land in the BP zone. So up here at the corner of Hempstead Road and Greenfield Road, this building that you see there does not exist. In fact, it will not exist because about a third of this site is where the Armstrong flooring project is currently under construction with the repositioning of our 2 existing buildings, which we chose not to demolish. But again, when this plan was pulled together a few years ago, we had a different vision for that corner. And then moving into the corporate center, we still have a couple pads next to the courtyard at Marriott that are still undeveloped. When you get back into the heart of Greenfield, near the duck ponds, I think most people are aware that we last year delivered the CSG building right by the duck ponds, and we still have, which was a tremendous success. Everyone's real happy with that. We have 1 vacant lot near the duck ponds yet undeveloped. And the majority of the undeveloped holdings in Greenfield consist of about 150 acres to the north, which we refer to internally as kind of the Zukesh Yoder tracts, which we purchased some time ago. And as I mentioned earlier, our manufactured home expansion, Eastwood Village, is part of what's being developed currently with the Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology also under construction. And we still have some vacant undeveloped lands directly across from the Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences to the east as well as to the south. Any questions on this? All right. Hearing none, I'll keep moving. I won't spend a lot of time on this because there's a lot of colors, but this is also just another exhibit as a reminder to the Planning Commission that we are in the process of and completed some additional trail network construction last year and extended some of our sidewalks and trail networks throughout Greenfield and are continuing to do so into next year as well. So that we do have as much pedestrian connectivity throughout Greenfield as we possibly can, both through the existing assets and buildings and into the undeveloped areas or the areas currently under development as well. Okay. And again, please chime in if anybody has any questions. All right, well, with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Brad or Mark, and we want to just get a little bit more into the details of why we're here tonight and specifically what we're asking for. Just as a reminder, well, let me let Brad or Mark jump in and we'll touch on some other things as we move forward.
Sure. So, I think that the overall driving force behind, the initial rezoning, as Ken mentioned, to the BP zone, allowed for, us to evolve Greenfield with the ever-changing market and industry sort of forces that are happening. And you can see, as we've talked about, with some of the growth with the Pennsylvania College of Health Sciences, Armstrong, Thaddeus Stevens, PSG, and some of the other health and wellness things that we're doing within Greenfield. And we do feel as though the flexibility has been a wonderful thing. And one of the areas that we wanted to approach you all had to do with housing. And so when we look at our Greenfield Estates and the reserve, you know, we're catering to different types of folks. In general, you know, we have, you know, a subset of our portfolio is workforce housing, as I'll call it, you know, in that 70 to 80% of area median income for Lancaster County. And then we have units that cater to clientele that are looking for something a little bit more upscale. But generally, when you look at the data and the demographic data, I think it's really telling. You have at the reserve, a third of the occupants there are 55 plus. The 42% of the property is millennials, which is really interesting. And granted, it's an 82-unit community, but it's an interesting dichotomy. And you see some of that also with Greenfield Estates, where you do have a large portion of our community at Greenfield Estates is in that sort of 50-plus age range. And so, again, when we look at the types of housing that we're looking to offer, we want to be able to cater to a wide variety of individuals. When you look at the manufactured housing side of the equation, you know, those homes, the existing homes, tend to sell somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 for the existing homes. The newer homes, if it was in phase 4, they're probably in the low $120,000 if it's existing. And then the new homes that we're looking at with Eastwood Village phase 5 are probably in that $175,000, $185,000 range, which, you know, compared to where the overall housing market is in and around Lancaster, we think that that's a really attractive price point from being able to offer that housing to individuals. And that group tends to be more of a 55 plus demographic for us. So again, when we look at just being able to grow and evolve with Greenfield, as it does bring in new businesses and new forces, we want to be able to look at a variety of ways to add housing to support that. And so with that, you know, we were looking for, you know, just having this discussion and looking to get some feedback from you all with regards to our ability to do that. Mark, anything else that you want to?
Brad, anything further?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, which then with that as a background leads to, you know, the specific ask and discussion that we wanted to have with the Planning Commission. Ken mentioned it earlier, but back in 2010, we initiated the discussions with staff, and it was about 600 acres that was rezoned to business park. And at that time, a lot of the undeveloped ground was Zook Ashiota. Now we're going to refer to it as Greenfield North. Since then, Brad's mentioned some of the development that's occurred, including what's under construction for Thaddeus Stevens. But one of the potential components that he's looking at is the multifamily on Zook Ashiota. And when the initial business part regulations went into effect in 2013 and then amended in 2016, there were caps on 2 of those uses. The multifamily had a cap, overall cap of 775 units, and the manufactured housing had a cap of 375 units. And when Brad started to look at the number, the buildings, the architecture of the multifamily, it brought the caps into discussion, and it related to some architecture, some construction, et cetera. And so we initially reached out to Tara and started to go back, look at it, re-examine why the caps were in and what the rationale initially was. and whether the township at this point in time would just consider lifting the caps. And looking back at my notes, looking back at the meeting minutes, one of the concerns that the township had was, what if, the unknown. And when we initially included Zuccotti Yoder as part of the business park, that was a lot of undeveloped ground. And rightfully, the township said, well, if we don't put a cap on that, that all could go to multifamily. And we didn't think that was a possibility just because of who and what Greenfield is and how it has organically grown over time. But we also said we understand the township's concerns and said we don't have an objection to the caps at that point in time. And because now some of those concerns we don't think are no longer really in play, because Zuccotti Yoder is being developed. Mentioned Thaddeus Stevens. There's a recorded plan for another industrial building. So the thought was, let's come in, have an informal discussion with the Planning Commission. Our plan is to go to the Board of Supervisors on the 18th and continue with this. And if staff, Planning Commission, and the supervisors are comfortable in removing those two caps at this point in time, we would come back, submit a petition, and go through the formal process of amending the zoning ordinance to remove those. Submit the petition, it would come back to the Planning Commission, go to the County Planning Commission for comments, and then ultimately up to the Board of Supervisors. But it's not our practice to surprise anybody. It's not our practice just to submit a petition and then start the discussion. We thought we'd come in, have this informal discussion, get your thoughts, and then make a decision whether we should proceed or not.
Thank you. Yeah, I did not know what you were coming in with, so the explanation was very thorough. Thank you. I didn't have the opportunity to do research as you did, Mark, back to minutes and notes. But yeah, there was some lengthy discussions in regards to those caps. But I think as you made it clear, Greenfield Industrial Park and the multiple names, or the few names that it's had, and now Greenfield has evolved and the times have changed and the needs have changed. You keep saying remove the caps. I believe you're talking about raising the caps and not have unlimited, but you're looking for a higher cap?
Well, there's a couple of ways we could go, Daryl. One would be to increase the caps. One would be to eliminate the caps and just allow the market and the industry to sort of take control and allow the residential component to the extent we can to proceed without caps. But that's an option. And if so, we wanted to have the discussion and get your thoughts on that. But ultimately, if we can remove the caps, we're not coming back in another 5 years, or maybe my successor in interest is not coming back in another 5 years. And having the discussion with the Planning Commission about, well, can we either increase it or should we remove it? So to sort of eliminate that next step or that next ask, it would be to eliminate the caps, or obviously the Planning Commission. We wanted to get your thoughts, and that could be one of your recommendations, just to increase them significantly.
Mark, on your plan there, it looked like you had something proposed layout. It looked like multifamily units up in that corner up there that where Greenfield and Willow come together right there. Is that right? Did I see that? Looks like you had a layout of multifamily units there.
Yeah, Ken, if you could put that back, and then I'm going to defer to Ken and Brad. They've been working much closer on those plans, and I'll just misspeak. So instead of that, I'll defer to Brad on that point.
Yeah, I looked in that corner up there. We're number 2 area, I guess. Is that apartment buildings? Is that what that's showing?
That's what this contemplates. And let me just ask you not to get too dialed into what this contemplates.
No,
this was one of 50 different iterations we did for this particular parcel of land. So Daryl, and let me maybe speak to your kind of question about is it an increased cap or is it removed altogether? What I would point out to the Planning Commission is we don't have an unlimited amount of undeveloped land within Greenfield Corporate Center, right? I mean, we have the tract across from the college. We have a tract, about a 9-acre tract just south of the college. We have a tract up at the corner of Greenfield and Hempstead, which in my opinion wants to be commercial, not residential, but don't hold me to that forever and a day. So what we're ultimately limited by is the density we can put on any of these tracts, the heights that the buildings can be under the zoning ordinance and saldo. So even if the township was amenable to lifting the cap altogether, it doesn't mean we've opened a floodgate of 10,000 units being built in Greenfield, over the next 2 years. It's just not physically possible. But the other thing I would say relative to lifting the cap altogether is that it's a smart thing to do, because the more density that we can fit into the remaining tracts of land under the zoning ordinance and in compliance with the ordinances, which allow for increased density, that's just smart growth planning, because it's within the urban growth boundary. It's where the density wants to be. I think we'll see as we move down this path that the county would support that. And why wouldn't we want to cluster the density of additional multifamily near the places where we work, near the places where we learn, near the places where we play? To us, that just seems like smart growth and smart planning. But to the question about this corner across from the college, yes, this plan says, well, here's what some buildings might look like if we did it this way. Nothing's been engineered, right? So there's no finality to this. We would still have to go through a land development process for anything we do on any of the remaining tracts. So we can't really tell you exactly how that's going to lay out at the end of the day.
Yeah, one other point I wanted to make, as you look at the overall square footage of construction and building space that we have here in Greenfield, right now the multifamily piece of that takes up about 10 to 11% of the total square footage. So as a percentage, it's really not a large component of the overall mixed-use offering that Greenfield is. And so I just offer that as also kind of supporting Ken's comment that we're not going to be overweighted or out of balance, if you will, with regard to a housing option within Greenfield.
And one of the things that Ken and Brad actually looked at was sort of the different types of uses, square footages, et cetera, within Greenfield proper. And that breaks down to office, warehouse and distribution, flex, educational, retail, restaurant, hotels, apartments, and the manufactured housing. So, if we were looking at 600 acres of undeveloped ground, I think it would make a lot of sense for us to say, let's use ranges, let's use caps. But what we're looking to do right now, and I think it would be consistent with Places 2040, would be just to use the undeveloped land as efficiently as we can.
With your existing caps, have you maxed that out, or do you have some reserve there, or?
Yeah, the current multifamily or apartment cap is 775 allowed under the BP zoning. We have between Greenfield Estates and the reserve, we have 453 existing units, which means under the current zoning, we could build another 322 units if nothing else were to change. We could probably put 322 units very easily on this tract of land across from the college, and that would be the end of it if things stayed status quo. Which is why, kind of in our mind, if the cap is no longer in place, and we don't have to have it be part of the conversation about how we really, maximize density to the best and smartest way, then this tract of land across from the college could be as many multifamily units as Saldo lets us fit on the site as the market wants to see. But it could also be something else. As I sit here today, we don't know what each of these undeveloped lots are going to be. We are, just like there's no cap on the square footage of other asset types, we think the multifamily should, be approached the same way.
So
Yeah,
I have a question, Ken. So what was the biggest surprise in the residential market over the last 3 years? Something that your group didn't see coming, or what surprised you about the market?
I'll let Brad speak to that.
So I think the biggest thing that I've witnessed in the 6, almost 7 years that I've been with High has just been the growing demand and need for housing, not only within Lancaster County and sort of the suburbs, but specifically here in Greenfield. I mentioned earlier on the call that our occupancy levels, even through a global pandemic, we're at 98 to 99% at the 2 communities existing that we have here within Greenfield. And I think, it goes to 2 aspects. Number one, that it's, really high quality housing, pun intended, but it's well run, it's customer centric and customer service oriented. And, I think it overall supports the businesses and growth and everybody that does come to Greenfield for whatever their daily business may be. And I think that the growing demand for housing needs within the overall county and East Lampeter Township, et cetera, I think is just something that I'm seeing more and more of and hearing more about, and I'm witnessing it through our entire portfolio, not just even within the assets within Greenfield or within even East Lampeter Township, but looking at our entire portfolio, there just continues to be this really strong need for high quality housing in markets that are growing, which we're seeing here.
What age groups? What age group is driving this market? Would it be like my age group, 55 and older? What age group is the dominant driver?
So I think the way I would answer that, Lancaster County in general, if you look at the overall demographic statistics, generally has a larger 55 plus boomer demographic than some of the other, Washington, D.C., Charlotte, North Carolina, and some of these other more urban markets. What I was really interested to see was at the reserve at Greenfield, when it leased up, we had, such strong demand from people downsizing and moving out of their homes that were empty nesters in that 55 plus category that wanted to live in a mixed age community, not necessarily moving to a active adult community or, somewhere else such as a Willow Valley, but really looking at an area where they can, feel as though they're part of, a community that's no different than if they were owning a house in a neighborhood. And again, I think having 42% in that millennial category at the reserve, it just was a really interesting balance. Whereas typically in a new construction, you might be thinking, or at least historically, when I was coming from Washington, D.C. and the projects that we were building down there, it was really the younger demographics that were pursuing those new builds. So I do think that there's a growing demand for folks that are looking to downsize and move into these communities. The same thing happened to us over at the Crossings at Conestoga Creek. It's in Manheim Township, but again, there's really a strong demographic of 55 plus that live at that community as well, in addition to the millennials that make it up. And there really are very few school-age children that live at our apartment communities. Across our portfolio, 5.1% of our households, of our total portfolio, are occupied by school-age children. So, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions associated with rental housing and apartment housing. That's one of them. There's going to be an overtaxing of school districts and school systems, and we just do not see the data. Not to say that in certain communities it may be higher, but that's just the data that I have that I can share with you factually today.
Thank you.
Do you have a sense of how many people who currently live in your residential properties actually work in Greenfield?
I don't have that statistic at my fingertips. It might be something I could data mine out of our database, but I don't have it currently. But we do have a decent amount of folks that do serve Greenfield or businesses that are associated with Greenfield that live in our two communities there, for sure.
Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, speaking to the prior question, one of the things that was a bit of an eye-opener for me relative to our new apartment communities was the demand for and the way the residents use the amenities that we also offer when we construct a new property. So when we build a new residential property, typically we're including things like pretty nice fitness rooms and yoga rooms and workstations down in the lobby area, where if you want to leave your apartment and get some distance between, you know, whoever you might be in your apartment with, you can go down into one of the workspaces. And we also include conference rooms that the residents can use, pet wash stations, things that when I first started building apartments, that was not really included in our buildings, in our packages, but that's what the market's looking for, and that's what our residents are looking for. And those are the kind of properties that we build and own and manage, and would continue to do so. Brad, any more color on kind of that from your point of view?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, one of the biggest amenities that we see right now that gets the most usage is actually dog parks. About 42 to 44% of our residents have a pet. And I think that trend it has been growing, and I think it will continue to grow. And if you hear in the background, my pet is getting a little frustrated with me too. So I apologize about that. But the amenities, I think, will continue to grow and take up more space within the buildings, especially given the work from home aspect that we are seeing trends in. We're looking to design larger floor plans in general than what you might see in a more urban location that caters to a wider variety of demographic situations, as well as more of the work from home mentality that the pandemic has accelerated. Also having more space that is within that building or set of buildings where people can still have the common ground of being able to sit next to someone like they are in a coffee shop, not necessarily talk to them, but hopefully socially distanced. But I think a lot of that's going to continue to happen, and people are going to be looking for those amenities as an overall component of it, in addition to the health and wellness, being able to get out and walk the trails, go for a run or a bike ride. I mean, those are all wonderful things that I think people are looking at Greenfield as having those amenities and wanting to live in an area where they can, have that health and wellness support that we're trying to push with our overall rebranding and some of the offerings we have within the corporate center.
How many units do you think you could fit in that area? I know you said you, right now with the caps, you probably have like 322 available for numbers, but how many would actually fit into that area up there, that number 2 area?
Well, this is just a rough guess because again, we haven't really done any engineering, and it depends on how much of the parcel gets kind of usurped by stormwater management. But probably, and it also depends on how high we might want to go. 4 stories, maybe 5 stories if we can park it. Maybe 400, maybe, and that's a guess.
And I think, Ken, you mentioned the big, the stormwater piece of it and the parking. They're natural constraints that are going to be on any project. As we look at, it's not just the parking ratio, it's being able to effectively operate it within the, confines of the zoning ordinance. And so, I think those are all things that we, look at and wind up being natural constraints of a project.
Would you anticipate if the caps were eliminated as opposed to raised, would you anticipate looking at converting any existing property used for manufacturing or corporate office or warehousing distribution to residential?
Fair question, Randy. I can't tell you that will never, ever happen, but I can tell you in my going on 20 years with High, we've never demolished a building in Greenfield that I can recall.
Holiday Inn.
What's that?
The Holiday Inn.
Well, yes, thank you. That's a good reminder. That's right, up on the corner.
Yeah.
Our owners, they're long-term holders of real estate. Do we have a few buildings in the corporate center? Don't say it, Ken. Do we have a few buildings in Greenfield that are on the older end of the spectrum? Probably, but the reality is, from a new residential project point of view, you need a kind of an economy of scale to make it worthwhile. So to take a 1 acre or a 2 acre lot in the middle of Greenfield and try to convert it to a multifamily building just doesn't make a lot of sense from an economies of scale standpoint. It's not how we would approach it.
Okay.
I think overall, I like the idea of when you first came in years ago and looking at using mixed uses there. My concern was that whole upper section there along Willow Road was going to turn into single family homes and not a good use of the land. I think what you're proposing here is a much more efficient use of the land. This is something I've been pushing all along, with a higher density versus single family homes which eat up so much ground. I certainly can see that the housing caps of multifamily may be restricting you somewhat. I would not want to see necessarily any more manufacturing housing into that section there. So I'm not sure I'd be interested in seeing the caps removed on that, or even that we would encourage that in there. I think the multifamily is the route to go. And the other thing is, I think if you did do something like that, maybe consider like mixed size units where you encourage more diversity rather than just one type of resident in these buildings. I think we have a lot of problem where we don't have enough diversity in our neighborhoods anymore.
I would agree with that. I mean, Ken and Brad know me from city and the county, so I'm always been a market person to say, let the market drive what gets built, with the exception of single family, especially in the urban growth areas. So the idea of supporting multifamily growth within that area, I think I could put my support behind that without restricting the numbers, because I do think the market's going to drive that as much as anything. So I don't know, but that helps you with your planning.
I would second both what Dan and Randy said to drive multifamily units into the urban growth areas is what I dream of. So I would be in favor of removing the caps so we don't have to revisit this again.
Okay.
Any more comment?
I agree with everyone as well. I guess my only concern is I'm thinking a little bit about the schools. And Brad, I know you mentioned that that's not kind of what you're targeting, but I guess that's my only concern is, you know, if this comes to, you know, a lot of families and, you know, the schools are already very filled up. So, but it sounds to me like from what you're proposing, you're thinking more in terms of, you know, where the reserve is and where your manufactured homes, what residents those, what you're attracting there.
Yeah, and Sarah, I just wanted to reiterate the comment that I made before, which is in our portfolio right now, we only have 5.1% of our residents and households have school-age children. So that is, you know, over 2,000 units within Lancaster County that I'm pulling that data from. We have one school-age child at the reserve out of 82 units. So it's even less in that new construction. And we have a total of, I think, 5 at the crossings, which is 258 units. So when you look at the new construction that we've done within Lancaster County, specifically the reserve and the crossings, they've been less than 2% of the overall households that we've added to the marketplace. So I understand the concern. You know, we look at that, but I just wanted to, you know, reiterate that data just so that, again, this is a question that we always get and something that, you know, I just live in data. So that's where I just try to share it as much as possible.
That's helpful. Thanks, Brad.
Sure.
Well, I imagine your percentage might be higher in Eastwood Village or not?
For school-age children?
Yes.
No, I think it probably is. It might be a little bit higher on average. Greenfield Estates is a little bit higher than the average, but you know, you're talking about 6%, not a wide variety there. So.
Okay. Yeah, I get through that area and I see children, but I'm thinking more than 2%. Maybe not more than 5, but there are kids. Yeah. And
there definitely are. You know, one thing that we do have a number of grandparents that take care of children after school that may not be full-time living within Eastwood Village, but definitely we can pull the data and look at that as much as possible. I just don't have as much insight there because the homeowners own the home, and so they don't have to register every occupant. Mm-hmm. So we just don't have as good a visibility into how many specific school-age children live there. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think, well, as you know, as we get to the next step, the kind of, as they say, the devil's in the details, and you know, the 2,000 units you have countywide, you know, but we're looking here, and I think that's some of what Sarah was talking about. What's the impact going to be in Conestoga Valley, obviously, where these are, and how you build it out, and some back to Dan's comment of that, you know, Greenfield Willow Corner, you know, you're now at, and if I heard you correctly, you're now at 775 cap. You could do about 400 there. Is that, which would just take you slightly over the 775. But I think the bigger concern of some, I think that Randy talked to was, you know, what's the potential throughout the 600 acres with the lands that are available. and probably the closest you've come to a demolition is what's numbered here is lot 1, where you pretty much gutted that total structure for Armstrong, but it is still going to be non-housing. But that was a major renovation to those structures.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you know, what would the potential be for a total build out for residential on the 600 acres, as opposed to 775? What? And I know it would be a range, as you spoke to, whether you do 4 stories or 5 or less, and the type of housing that would be put in. It would, you know, be a range that could vary considerably on the potential residential that you would look at for the multifamily.
We'll give that some thought. Thank you.
Yeah, and traffic's always concerned, but with the extension of Walnut Street out is going to give you a new avenue and make it even more desirable for access and in and out of the property, which will be a plus.
Yeah, and we didn't intend to get into a discussion of traffic this evening, but
No.
As Tara well knows, the extension of Walnut Street and everything that we may or may not do on these remaining lots to the north all kind of tie together, and were contemplated that traffic generated by the development of all these lands, whether it be residential or commercial or industrial, gets, you know, addressed in large part with the extension of Route 23.
Yes. So any other comments? I believe, if I may speak, I think in general, you're getting a pops, you know, from the commission.
Carol, you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry.
Especially when you were summarizing, Daryl. Come on, you have to be a little clear.
Well, I just got a pop on my screen that my internet connection is unstable. So I hope that's not referring to me, but I was just saying that I think in general, I think you've had a favorable response from the Planning Commission, and I think is willing to look at this at the next level and moving forward with, you know, more discussion. And as I said, I think the devil's in the details. So, you know, I think that's some of what your earlier ask was, you know, do we get shut down now or should we go forward? You know, is it worth spending the time and effort to move forward? And I think, you know, you're getting some smiles and some positive reaction here. So I think it can be worth your effort. And I think it could be a plus. You do a nice job in East Lampeter Township, and we're glad to have you. You know, no pun intended, but it is high quality that you put in. So, so thank you. I don't know if others have comments to close this or from either side.
Daryl, don't give Brad the plus for the pun. He's been saying that several times over the last few days. So just please stop that.
I was just letting him know I was listening.
I appreciate it. Much appreciated. My team appreciates that.
Thank you for the kind words. And thank you for your time this evening. We appreciate it. We'll be back in front of you sometime in the future.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the comments and your time.
You can.
And again, we look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Before Ken goes, I just have to ask him.
Thank you.
Before Ken goes, I just have to ask him to call it a roundabout. It's not a traffic circle.
My apologies. Yes, the roundabout at the end of Walnut Street Extended. That's right. Thank you, Ralph. I'll write that down.
And again, just for the record, there was no public comment.
Ralph, don't tell Tony I used that term. He'll get upset with me. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay, moving on. Thank you. Annual report of the Planning Commission. Everybody get their copy and their updated.
Daryl was kind enough to review the draft that went out thoroughly, which I always expect of him. So I sent out revisions today, including the number of subdivision and land developments. It should have been 9 and not 10. So our list involves everything that comes in within that calendar year. However, we do take action on some things that come in December or November of the year prior in the calendar year that we're reporting on. So that's why there was that change in that number. And then he also reminded me that we reviewed on our 5-year schedule both of our comprehensive plans this past year in 2020. And so that's important to note so that we can make sure that we stay on track with those reviews every 5 years. So if you're fine with the way the annual report is written, I'll ask the chairman to sign the letter and we'll move it forward to the Board of Supervisors for their February 1st meeting because it does need to be to them before the 1st of March of this year.
Any comments on the 2020 annual report?
You need a motion on that, or?
That would be great. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that Daryl signs it and sends it on to the township supervisors.
So we have a motion to approve the annual report. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have the motion and a second. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. We have 5 affirmatives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Briefing items. The 2020-21 Glick Fire Equipment, 350 Mill Creek Road, Final Land Development Plan.
Give me 1 second and I will share that with you. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Mill Creek Road, just before you get, is everyone familiar with Mill Creek Road?
Yes.
Yes.
Where is it coming at? Yeah.
Just before you get to the Amtrak overpass. Okay, so make a left off of Route 340, travel back Mill Creek Road, past the airport, and then you come to Glick Fire Equipment on the left-hand side. This is Glick Fire Equipment. We're looking at a 2,300 square foot addition to the front of the building here with some additional parking to make up for the area that they're covering with building. There's no new employees for this addition. It is just an expansion of the building interior. There's offices in here, restrooms, and storage area that's proposed. Although it's a straight...
Had they been in earlier or something? I thought we reviewed something on this property before.
Glick has been in previously. They had come in with a potential, I'm gonna zoom out here a second. They had come in with this building back here, the accessory structure, and then they had come in with a potential building over in this area. They also came in with a stormwater plan some time ago, I want to say around 2015 or 14, to alter the shared facility down here at the airport. There's a swale and there's a basin back here, which I'm sorry, the plan doesn't go to on this particular page. So as I was saying, although it looks like a straightforward plan, I did get the draft review today and it is 16 pages. So we're going to work through that with the consulting engineer before it comes back to you in February. Try to narrow that down quite a bit.
Any other comments, questions? So we'll see this next month.
Yes, you will.
Okay, moving on. Other business, none at this time. Unless somebody has something. If not, we have the announcement. The forecast meeting is Saturday, February 6th. It'll be virtual by Zoom, 8 a.m.
That's correct.
And it's 2 hours.
That's correct. That's what we anticipate it being.
So.
Yeah, this year it's BYOB. Bring your own breakfast.
In the past, we've held it, Sarah and Randy, at a facility within the township somewhere, and breakfast was provided, and had presentations by multiple people, and enjoyed the camaraderie. But it'll be interesting to get all those folks on a Zoom this year.
Yes. Now, Sarah was in attendance last year as a hearing board member, I believe, at Whitmer Fire Company. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yep. Okay. The breakfast was delicious.
I think this will be Randy's first.
Yes, it will be.
That's right. You were on the other committee, Sarah. That's right.
I'm moving up to bigger and better things on the Planning Commission.
Penny? If there's nothing further, I'll look for an adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So we have a motion, I believe, by Dan and a second by Randy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
This was longer than most of our meetings. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, though.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening.
See you in February.
Mm.